Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life Community Calendar at ncwlife.com.
Welcome to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. I'm Eric Grandstrom, your host, and we talk about various subjects here on Let's Learn. It was kind of a joke after our tax season last year that I thought, well, we've covered taxes, let's talk about death. Well, we actually did a Death and Dying series, which you can find on our website at ncwlife.com, and we're back to taxes, so, you know, the life circle just continues. Pete Lucchini joining us here from Cordell Naring Company, who's a certified public accountant with them. And Pete, first of all, we didn't talk about this last time. If folks didn't watch last year, a girl named Pete.
Yes.
There's some people, you know, boy named Sue, girl named
Right.
Pete. How did that happen?
Well, you don't pick your nickname. It gets assigned at a very young
True.
age. I
This is
think
true.
I was about a couple months old, and it was Petey, and then it was Pete.
Okay.
So
Huh?
pretty
Just stuck.
funny. Yeah, it
Yeah.
stuck.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
Granny, by the way.
Are you?
And
Oh,
that's
great.
a carryover from my dad, actually. And it's just a play on the last name.
I
so.
like it.
Yeah. Yeah, although these days I kind of feel rather like a
Can I
granny
call you
too.
Granny?
Sure, sure. Go ahead.
Great.
Pete's here on our second episode here of Tax Tips with the gang from Cordell Naring Company, thankfully. They're coming in to talk about the taxes for this year, as we're now upon another season for tax time and time to start thinking about getting all your paperwork together. And hopefully by now you've received your information from your employers to get ready for the tax season coming up. A busy time for you guys at Cordell Naring Company as well, I'm sure.
Yep.
Has Jeff retired? Is he still around?
Oh, Jeff's still around.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Jeff's
Well,
there.
we were nervous when he told us last year he was retiring. We're
Well,
like,
yeah,
how could he actually retire?
He's cutting his hours back to about 45 a week. I think.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Especially this
so
time of year.
very part-time.
Yeah. I kind of figured as much. Well, today we're going to talk about an interesting subject. When an attorney hires an accountant.
Right.
And what's the reference here? What framework did you want to bring this to us?
Well, I mean, really, the client hires us, but it's typically when someone is using an attorney. Oftentimes, the attorney will say to them, "You need to hire an accountant because this is beyond the scope of something I'm able to do. We need a professional that can help us with a number of things." And
Okay.
so I have a kind of a long laundry list of things that we do in that regard, and they're actually quite a bit different than tax work. So it's a little fun, a little different.
Well, this question actually came up in the newsroom here a couple months ago when we had that huge Powerball jackpot, and this 20-year-old wins the whole mess. And I've always thought, and I have people that have helped me with my taxes, but I don't have an accountant per se
Right.
that's on a regular,
Right.
stipend with me. But I would think that an attorney and an accountant is the first. If I win something like that, that's probably the first two people I'm going to go find.
Absolutely, particularly in a state with an estate tax like
Yeah.
Washington State. So you definitely want to have
Yeah.
an
Oh,
accountant
okay.
and attorney work
Now
together.
this is totally off subject.
I know.
What's your recommendation, if you have one, if somebody does win or come into a big giant pile of money like that, where they say, okay, you can have a little bit at a time over the years, 20-year payout or whatever, or you can take it all at once. Of course, we're going to take a big chunk of taxes out of that on your first go-around, so that your $700 million jackpot suddenly becomes, after payout and taxes, about $300 million. More than half of that goes to taxes. But do you have a recommendation for somebody?
I'd have to know the person. I'd have to know what their goals are and what they'd want to do.
Okay.
For some people, it would make sense to take a cash payout. In a lot of cases, cash is king. And $300 million can last a really long time, in my estimation. Or sometimes, depending on your needs, if you have high cost needs and you want to make sure that you have a cash flow stream for the rest of your life, that might be beneficial.
Okay.
It just depends on the person.
Okay, that's a great answer. See, that's why we have the experts in here. Okay, Pete, so an attorney, an accountant hiring attorneys, I guess some of what we talked about last time here on Let's Learn in reference to getting in trouble with the IRS, we want to come to you, we want to come to an attorney. I mean, do we need both? What's the circumstance
for
there?
IRS work, I tend to, we're not practicing law. And so it's really a procedural, jumping through the hoops, following the rules. So oftentimes an attorney isn't necessary at the levels that we're dealing with it. If it escalates, then we usually would get an attorney involved. We just don't see a lot of that. What we do as far as working with attorneys is there's a little bit of tax involved, but it's very different. We do a lot of litigation support service is what we call it. And so we'll do things like we'll value a business in any number of situations. For like a buy-sell agreement, if there is a contentious situation amongst shareholder buyouts or that kind of a thing, we can put some values to the numbers. If there is a divorce dissolution, we can value a closely held business so that one party can buy out the other, because in Washington State, if you're divorcing, the judges aren't going to let you continue to own that business together.
Right.
So we will value pensions. If there's a long-term Boeing employee and they've got a defined benefit plan as opposed to a defined contribution plan like a 401k, well, you're going to get a series of cash flow over the period for the rest of your life. What is that worth today in today's dollars? And that's something that we've had special training and experience to do. So we do some forensic accounting. We'll do things like tracings, where we'll figure out where the money came from, where the money went to, in issues where there's some question about good behavior. So we do a fair amount. We've done some for what's called a meretricious relationship, where they're not actually married, but they've commingled their assets for a long-term period together. We will testify in court and do expert testimony if it's required for the situation. In my experience, I try to get my party to settle as much as I can, because everybody wins if they settle.
Right.
It's just such a costly endeavor to spend any amount of time in court. And in Washington State, a mandatory settlement conference is required in a dissolution for marriage. And that's not the judge that's assigned to your case, but one of the other judges will then provide kind of a mediation. You'll be in different rooms, and the judge will go back and forth and try to get you guys to work it out and settle before it actually goes to court. And so a lot of times we'll be in there for those. And we can provide a lot of help because we understand so many different things that an attorney might not. We understand the math behind things. We can get the tax consequences of being the custodial parent, or being able to claim head of household, who gets to claim the kids. So even when there's custody agreements, we can be valuable.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here and come back. You've opened a can of a lot of worms here, so we'll dive into that as we continue on here on Let's Learn on the NCW Life channel. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.
Welcome back to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. Appreciate you joining us here on television, on Channel 12, on LocalTel, on Channel 19 on Charter, over the air at 47.1, or also on our website, ncwlife.com. I'm Eric Granstrom, your host, and this series of Let's Learn, we're doing tax tips with Cordell Nair and Company, and Pete Lucchini joining us here to talk about when you should hire an accountant, maybe necessarily over hiring an attorney, or the attorney's going to come to you with questions. We mentioned a lot of topics before we went to the commercial break. I want to ask you about pensions. If we withdraw from our pension early, there's tax ramifications to that.
Yes.
If you go through a divorce and there's that dividing of your pension that goes on, where the one party or the other, the married person not having the pension, is usually getting half in the state of Washington to that pension. What happens with that tax ramification if it is cashed out to settle that divorce?
So you've got a lot of things going on there, which is great. First off, let's define what a pension is. So a pension is a future cash stream of dollars. You don't see them a lot anymore because they don't exist. A retirement plan asset, a 401k or an IRA, let's say, is not a pension. So those are two different things, and we do them both a little bit differently.
Okay.
So when we help plan for these things, or if we value one, and we'll also oftentimes help with the asset division. It's not actually 50-50 all the time. it has a lot of balance to it as far as who's got the future, how long the marriage, what the term of the marriage was, who has the future potential to earn more money. And so sometimes you'll see an asset allocation where one party gets a higher percent than the other because the other has more ability to earn more over the rest of their lifetime.
Sure.
So there's some fascinating nuances to that. But when it comes to that pension, we would normally recommend that you actually don't cash it out. What instead you would do is you would get a QDRO, or Qualified Domestic Relations Order. Those are required for pensions. They're also required for a 401k. They are not required for an IRA. An IRA, you can just easily change the name in the other person's name, and then it becomes as if it was their pension.
Okay.
So you're married
what
for a
they do
number
with
of
it
years.
after that point is up to them.
Yeah, if they want to cash it out after that point, then it is up to them.
Okay.
So then, and then the important part to note is that property distributed pursuant to the dissolution of a marriage is not taxable. So there's, you know, if you sell out your half of the business, there's no capital gains because you sold it out. It's distributions within the marriage.
And that falls under a separate category then?
Yeah, I mean,
As far as the taxes are
yeah,
concerned.
it's not considered taxable income, which
all
is
right. Good to
fantastic.
know.
And those are things that we as accountants get very clearly, and I think many attorneys also get that. But when we work together as a team, we can really build some value in for our clients.
When this is a situation going on where you're having to go through legal counsel to get a marriage dissolution, and they have to turn to an accountant, turn to you for help, is the attorney hiring you? Is the people looking for the dissolution of the marriage hiring you? How does that work?
The clients actually will be hiring me. We do conflict checks amongst our firm, just like an attorney's office does, and then sometimes we'll get a retainer. If
What do you mean conflict?
We don't want any conflict of interest, so
Oh, okay.
we're
Okay, so
representing
personal.
them.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
we want to make sure we're representing them clear of any conflicts. And so the client then meets with us. The attorney may recommend us. Sometimes we are hired through the attorneys. It depends. If we're going to do a very short-term job, we will bill them, and then they will bill their clients. But generally speaking, the client is our client.
Okay. Are we seeing with the economy, you know, as far as what's happened in the state of Washington, it seems a little more difficult to be a small business owner. Are we seeing a lot of companies that are folding the tent and saying, okay, unfortunately can't do it anymore? And are you seeing that? Are you seeing that reference from attorneys that are saying, okay, we need to take whatever assets you have in this company now that you're no longer a business? Are you seeing that?
I
there a
don't
trend?
see it frequently. What I would say is I see businesses under continued pressure with, Washington's a heavily taxed state for small businesses, and I see a continuing ongoing pressure for them to figure out ways to meet the, increasing tax mandates that are placed upon them.
You mentioned a term I hadn't heard before, forensic accounting.
Yeah.
That sounds very Dr. Quincy, MD. Of course,
Yeah.
I just aged myself a lot by that reference there.
I got it. so.
NCI, yeah, there we go. What is that?
Well, forensic accounting is basically when there's a puzzle and they don't know the answer to it. So they want to know what happened. Something happened. They don't know either where the money went or who has the money or who held title to the money. We've done
And who are they in this question?
Anybody who feels like they didn't, that something hasn't been done fairly
Okay.
or correctly.
Okay.
So I've done it for estates. I've done it in marital dissolution cases.
He was hiding the money.
Right. Absolutely.
One of those types of
yeah. You'll see all sorts of different things. And so what we'll do is the nice thing about money nowadays is there's usually a paper trail to almost everything. Now, once it turns into cash, it gets a little trickier. But for the most part, there's a paper trail. We've looked at who owned the life insurance policy when the name title got changed. There's always a paper trail. So then we go in and dig in and do that work, and then we can testify to it.
How much? What kind of authority do you have in that? And how do you go into, say, XYZ life insurance and say, hey, Tom, we're looking into Tom's situation here, and because a lot of that stuff is private.
Right. We have no authority.
Okay.
We have the authority that's granted to us by either the individual in charge or the court system. And so what happens in those cases is that the attorneys will kind of battle it out in court, and they'll do what's called discovery, and the judge will agree and require the other to provide that data. So really, we are data analysts in many ways.
And then that's determined by, okay, so I'm the guy in the question here, and some of my practice has been a question. So I provide it to you, or you have at that point, is a subpoena power from the courts that would go into his accountant, to his bookkeeper, to his this, that, and the other
Well,
thing?
the most cost-effective way is if you just provide it to me. But if you're on the receiving end of a subpoena, you tend to comply with it. So it depends. Sometimes you have to escalate it to attorneys in the court system, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can just ask for it, and you'll get it. So we've done it all different ways.
Can't we all just get along?
Right. No.
No,
turns out. We can't.
especially, and we're going to take a break here. Family business, and sometimes how nasty family business can get. And we have a lot of family business, especially orcharding and
Right.
anybody in farming. So I want to talk to Pete as we
Sure.
continue about that, as we continue here on Let's Learn on the NCW Life channel with our Tax Tips program. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Welcome back to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel, talking about representation. An attorney, an accountant, both. Pete Lucchini with Cordell Nair & Company is here to talk about that and where it comes in handy. We talked before going to the break about doing business with family. Any time that I've been close to that, I've seen it to my own family, you just hope, you go into it with the best aspirations. Sometimes it's even worse than doing business with strangers.
Sometimes, but when I talk to clients that are forming partnerships, I remind them frequently that a partnership is very similar to a marriage. And when a marriage goes south or a partnership goes south, it's akin to a divorce, and it can get very messy and challenging quickly.
We were talking during the commercial break about how you get involved and taking sides. And this is a small town. I mean, we know people. You know people.
Right.
How tough is that?
Well,
especially when you're representing,
Right. So the beauty of working in litigation support services is that I don't take sides. I take nobody's side except my own. So I'm an advocate for my own opinion, for my judgment, but I don't take anybody's side. So if two parties that disagree come to hire me to value a business, my expectation for myself is that I would, if they hired me separately, I would give them each the same answer.
Okay. So that's great.
Yeah, so that is, I don't advocate for one side or another. Now, if I'm going to help them with any kind of tax planning or other things that are not related to my opinion of value, I can give them some advocacy in that regard, right? Well, you'd want to take cash because, there's some tax affecting that, won't occur on the pension plan or something like that. So there are some benefits they can gain in that way. But when it comes to valuations and court testimony, I take nobody's side but my own.
Numbers are the numbers.
They really are.
And
it's math.
Yeah, this is old math, not the new math, right?
It is the old math.
Okay. All right. How often do you find yourself in court in this kind of circumstance? Or do you just do a lot of behind the scenes, you provide the information, and then they go deal with it?
Well, I spend a fair amount of my time doing litigation support services, more and more. It's fascinating work. I have been to court a number of times. We try to, like I said, encourage clients to, because it's generally in their best interest, we kind of thumbnail your, rule of thumb approach to the cost of court and say, well, if you can get this much, don't spend this much on court. And so, and the opposite holds true as well. We will encourage them, well, you're going to do better in court, you might as well go for it. But that doesn't happen too frequently if we can help it. But yeah, we do tend to go to court on occasion and testify. And
so which is cheaper by the hour, you or an attorney?
I think it depends on the attorney, but I think I'm more cost efficient.
Okay, I shouldn't say cheaper.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Cost.
all right. Well, and
less costly.
The important thing about that is consulting a professional before you get there,
right,
so that you can try to avoid some of these pitfalls,
right.
if things don't work out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. You don't know what you don't know, and so you don't know that their pension you know, it's unique because the state of Washington has a pension plan for, say, teachers and stuff, and they'll put numbers on those reports that they provide, but that's not an actual value of that pension. It's a number of money that was paid in, but that pension has a different value because it's a future stream of cash flows, and so then we will discount it back to in today's dollars to get an actual value. And if you didn't know that there's a difference between those two numbers, you'll take whatever that number is.
And
so
kind of mess yourself up in the process.
Or, I mean, sometimes you'll be at the advantage, but it's less equitable in the long run.
Okay.
So there's a lot of opportunities for us to help clients. And even with tax planning, you know, a lot of times I'll see clients that say, well, I want to take the kids. Well, I want to take the kids. Well, you have 4 kids. Each of you take 2. So, you know, then take the younger one because they'll be younger longer. You'll get the child tax credit longer. There's a lot of different things that we can do that is just kind of second nature information to us that most people aren't aware of.
Okay. You kind of touched on a little bit there, asset equalization assistance.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
So when 2 parties are divorcing and they've got any number of assets, we will help sort of split the baby, so to speak. How do we get them to an equal level? Because not all asset, you know, an asset has a dollar amount to it, but that's not necessarily, they're not exactly equal. So for example, if you have $100,000 in 401k and $100,000 in cash, one party takes the 401k and the other party takes the cash. That's not a 50-50 distribution by any stretch because that 401k is pre-tax and there will be tax paid on it when you take it out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I will help calculate that differential so that it is a more equal distribution.
You talked about the forensic accounting, and you talk about the equalization of the assets there. I, for some reason, just had an image of you with a shovel in the backyard, looking for those hidden cans of Folgers with cash inside.
No, if you want to hide it, that's a good way to do it. Unfortunately, holding cash, of course, is a poor investment, though, because
yes, right.
It's not
Speaking
ideal.
of which, I just was looking at my change jar on top of my dresser.
Mm-hmm.
Should I be putting that back in the system? Because everybody's doing it. Everybody's got the big change jar, and that's out of circulation. This is a silly question for this whole topic, but it came to me.
It's a great question. And the answer is, well, you can't spend it when it's sitting in your coin jar, but maybe you don't want to spend it. So we're talking such a small amount, it's what we would call immaterial to the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. It's about $9, I think. Tax strategies and planning. When it comes to, and you know, usually if I've got an attorney involved and I'm having to come to you, then we got a problem. When we get to that point, what are you looking at? What are you telling people? I mean, as far as, you know, okay, come to me sooner before we get here.
Yeah, I look at everything. And a lot of times I'll actually meet with both parties. So I've done some pro se work, which means that neither party has an attorney. They'll come to me together. And that one is actually, you know, I don't practice law, so I still encourage them to have an attorney draft all of the paperwork. And I encourage them to meet with an attorney if they have any questions or they don't understand anything, because that's not my job. I really, in this regard, do math. And make recommendations. But the nice thing is I have both parties sitting in front of me and I can say to them, this is what is in your best interest, but unfortunately this is what is in your best interest. And somehow you two are going to have to meet in the middle.
Sure.
And that is ultimately up to them.
Well, you talked about cost efficiencies.
Right.
I imagine having the numbers in hand when you go to the attorney is going to be cost efficient, because if they both agree and you both have the numbers, and you say, here you go, Sam, lawyer, let's figure this out.
Right. Everybody saves money when you're prepared. So if you're organized, you're on time, and you're prepared, you will save accounting fees, you'll save attorney fees, you'll save all sorts of fees.
What's the number to call if people want more information from you?
663-1661.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Pete Lucchini joining us here on Let's Learn on the NCW Life channel. If you'd like to watch more of our Let's Learn shows, then head to our website, ncwlife.com. Thanks for watching.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.